Yeah, I thought maybe making an individualized video for you will help me explain certain things that I have seen that maybe it's better for me to explain them than to leave it in writing because it's kind of like confusing maybe. You have your lesson plan. You just said simulation, but you need to explain simulation of what, because simulation alone is not a good title. Then coming to your standards, you have good social studies standards. When I look at your objectives, they don't really sound like objectives. They sound like a goal for the lesson, because the objectives are supposed to be written in such a way that they are easy to measure, and they're measurable, and we can easily see like this is objective one, objective two. So here I thought maybe there are many it's written in a way that the goal itself is not really explaining what exactly students should be able to do by the end of the lesson. Yes, they're supposed to be able to know, have the knowledge of Oregon Trail, blah, blah, blah. But our main concern is what is it exactly that someone who comes into the classroom at the end of the lesson, they're supposed to have something tangible, like, okay, they were able to see, they're able to simulate, they're able to identify this and that. The word identify is measurable. How do I come up with the word identify here? Because you are saying you are looking for them to develop knowledge regarding the what the so if you're looking at it's more of a knowledge domain. Why? Because of now we are talking about simulate and observe the conditions are necessary to survive. So having the condition, you can just simply list the conditions, or you can just simply identify them through maybe recording them down. That's part of looking for knowledge. So one of my objectives the ways that I will use from the Bloom's taxonomy will be under the knowledge domain, which is identify. Then students will be able to simulate the trip from Missouri to Oregon. The word simulate here falls under application. So for them to be able to show that they are simulating, then that it means they're able to what? To apply the knowledge that they have. So in this goal, you already have what? Two objectives that you can measure. Coming down here, um, I noticed that you just put this is not what we are looking for under the domain of learning outcome. So if you look at the Bloom's taxonomy, it has these 6 domains, and there are some action verbs or some verbs that you can use, such as identify, describe, assimilate, and they follow under each category. So what you need to do is to indicate where your objectives fall under. So you have 2 objectives that I have written down. They fall under knowledge and application. So maybe that's not what you are looking for. I really don't know. But that's what your goal is leading us to. That's why I have written these objectives this way. So coming again to assessment, they really look. I understand what you're talking about, but the problem is the way that we explain assessments. We need to have some type of assessment that we are able to say, here's the assessment that the student is gonna be using. So for this one, we just indicated that the teacher should have um, an idea is to each student's knowledge. So how do you get that information from students? What assessment are you gonna use? That's what we need to know. So in my explanation, I just say maybe I'm gonna use a question and answer in order to have some general idea or knowledge of what students know about the Oregon. So the question and answer becomes your type of question. I'm also attaching a document for you so that at least in the future, if you want to revise or write a lesson plan, you can go and look at some of the assessment methods and techniques that I have put together on the document. Then one thing that I have noticed that many of you have failed to do, and I'm not saying you really have completely failed that. No, I'm just saying that it's difficult for many of you to show that. The alignment of standards, objectives, and assessments. What do you mean by alignment of standards, objectives, and assessment? So you look at your objective, what it is looking, standard, what is looking at, it's looking at tracing the migration and settlement of human population and all the stuff, fine. Your goal of the lesson or objectives, are they aligned? Yes, there's some alignment because you are still looking at knowledge regarding the Oregon Trail, settlement of movements of people from one place to another. I understand that. But when it comes to alignment of the objectives to the assessment, what it means is what you have as your objective should be also assessed. Like, how do you assess each objective that we have? So in the first one, you said assessment will come in two forms. First, there will be an oral quiz given regarding the content of simulation. You are now telling us about assessing simulation, but the problem that we have is like we didn't have really an objective that really indicate that students should be able to simulate the trip, like explain clearly that you want them to be able to simulate. So I had to make that objective depending on what you have here. Then the number of people who survive the simulation should increase on. So I really don't know whether the number of people, I was really confused when I was reading this, but later I realized after reading the lesson plan, the procedures, that you are talking about the number of students in the simulation that they are doing. The more that they understand the simulation, that's lessen their mistakes, the more that they will be able to survive. But the other one, in terms of where you say um, observe the conditions necessary to survive the trip. The word observe is not very measurable. So as they are observing, what are they doing exactly that you'll be able to assess to see if they've met the objective? So what I decided to do was to identify the conditions necessary to survive. So because you said there were two objectives, two assessments, sorry, the second one is to assess the ability or um, their ability to observe the conditions through what identifying the necessary condition to survive. So that's why I have this second assessment that you're going to use there. How did I come up with this assessment? Again, I looked on your procedures, and somewhere down here, uh, you had said that, let me see, okay, in your closure somewhere, you said have students present their record sheets and describe the reason that certain combination, again, certain combinations, I don't know what you are really referring to, but I was just assuming that conditions in terms of conditions that will allow them to survive, maybe that's what you're talking about. So because we have this kind of statement, I had to come back here and say maybe that's when you are talking about they need to have an assessment that will be a presentation of the items recorded in which students listed the conditions necessary to survive the trip from New Zealand to Oregon. So this assessment is aligned to the closure that you have. So what we are trying to say is that your activities should be aligned to assessment and your objectives, or your procedures should be aligned to assessment and objectives. So it's not like you ask students to maybe to simulate, and then at the end of the day in your assessment there's no simulation, there's something else, then it becomes wrong. So here I noticed that you were asking them to simulate, yes, but the ability to observe the conditions, it wasn't assessed anywhere. That's why I have it here. I hope I'm making sense here that we need to know more about aligning our objectives, our assessment, our procedures. One example that I always give students is that suppose you're asking students to list um, the conditions that are necessary. And then on your assessment, you are saying they are writing an essay. Listing the conditions and writing the essay are two different things. So they are not aligned. So in that case, it means your objectives and your assessment have no alignment. So you're asking students things that will not have taught you, that you are not really geared toward in your lesson. So also in your objectives, in your procedures, one that you have to be looking at also is to always make sure that you are addressing what you want the students to accomplish by the end of the day. So I feel like you've managed to do that somehow, but all you need to do is to clean up your document so that at least the alignment is really shown clear. I hope that I have managed to explain to you the idea of aligning objectives, assessments, and procedures. Your I tried to open your link, it's not really working, so I wasn't able to see exactly what are some of the things that you are asking them as part of survival skills or something. So make sure that your link is working. If you have any questions, let me know. We are on the right track and you have great potential.